Hey everybody, my name is Jason Gold and I'm back with another episode of Investor Insights. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the importance of post-earnings callbacks and why they're so important to get just right. So let's talk about what a post-earnings callback is, just to get everything started. You spent all this time preparing your earnings script, you've done your earnings call. Now it's the time that you spend one-on-one with analysts from, call it 5:30 p.m. Eastern time until late in the evening, spending one-on-one time with each of the covering analysts that follows your stock. I want you to think about post-earnings callbacks like the dessert at the end of a really good meal. And you're the chef that takes a lot of care to make sure his restaurant gets a really good recommendation in the New York Times. This is something you don't want to slack on. You don't want to spend all of your attention on the earnings call only to slack on the post-earnings callback. It's just as important to get just right, and there are some really key things that you can do during a post-earnings callback that can really shape the outcome for your company and your stock in the days that follow. So how does this work? You take time to write a script. You edit that script. You practice the script. Then you even pre-record the script. You spend all this time focusing on it, and then you do your earnings call. And then sometimes there are crickets. Sometimes there's just not that many people listening to your call. But there's a reason for that. See, back in the days when I was on the sell side, and even the early days when I was on the buy side, a really good sell side analyst might only cover 8, 10, or the best would cover 12 stocks. Today, some of the highest rated analysts can cover 40 or even 50 stocks. I heard one of the best software analysts is now covering 74 stocks. So what does that mean? It means that you can bet your bottom dollar that on the day you have earnings, 10 other companies in your sector have earnings as well. And so there's a very good chance that you will do your earnings call and there will be no one from the sell side on it. Now, that's a low likelihood that no one will be on it. Maybe you'll get the backup third string quarterback, the low-level associate who's 26 or 25 years old, fresh out of MBA school, or 2 years out of college on your earnings call, asking a very basic question. Now, maybe you're Google and Snap and Microsoft and you have the number one analysts on your call, but that doesn't always happen. And even if you do, they might be hopping back and forth between earnings calls. So the post-earnings callback is your chance to go one-on-one with the covering analyst to make sure that they understand all of the key points from your earnings call and that their note the next day reflects everything that's really important. And it's less about the note itself and more about their understanding of the puts and takes about the quarter and about the guidance. And this is when you can get it really right. Now, I've been on calls where there are actually no questions. And people who know me and know where I worked have been on some of those calls. And it's actually a little bit embarrassing. But here's something to not forget. As a company, most of the people that are going to actually consume the information from your call will do so via the transcript several days or weeks later. So don't be upset that there might only be 10, 20, or 30 people on your call and you might only get a handful of questions. Rest assured that if you are a company worth investigating, that there will be hundreds or thousands of investors that consume everything that you had to say word for word through that transcript. And what you have to remember is that you're competing for time and attention, not only with other companies the day that you report, but with analysts for their attention, with investors for their attention. And so your script, and importantly, your post-earnings script, literally, you should have a separate piece of paper that you go through at the end of your earnings call with each of your analysts that are the key points that they need to take home that day about the quarter, about your numbers, and about your guidance. Make sure you get that script right with just the most important points so that when you're competing for their time and attention, you're getting what you deserve. How many times have you gotten on a post-earnings callback and the analyst gets on and says, hey, I'm really sorry. I actually didn't get a chance to listen to your call and I haven't read the transcript yet. Tell me what's most important. Tell me what do I need to know? I mean, I talked to my associate, they were on the call and I see how the stock's reacting in the aftermarket and I see the headlines, but what do I need to know? This is your chance. Now, let me be clear. You can't tell the analyst some story that isn't true. You can't get away with telling them something that you didn't say on the call or enhancing something that really isn't just right. But this is your opportunity to hammer home the most important things that you want them to know. See, that earnings script might be 18, 20, 22 minutes of prepared remarks. You're gonna have 10 or 15 minutes of total callback time with this analyst. You wanna hammer home 1, 2, and 3. You want to tell them, this is what we talked about. The quarter was like this. The guidance was like this. We're really excited about this, this, and this. And then you can even say, on the Q&A, people were focused on this and this. Think about it. You're giving this analyst a pre-read. It's like the Cliff's Notes version of what they're going to see later, and you get to shape their view. If you don't do it, they might talk to some short sellers. They might talk to people that don't like you. And then when they read the transcript, they will have a different attitude. Now, again, let me be clear. You can't pull a fast one on them. And you can't expect to change their mind. But what you can do is gently shape how they view what you're saying so that they focus on the most important things. And that's where your job comes in. I create callback notes for my clients. Again, this is like the Cliff's Notes version, but at the top of the callback page, it has the 3 or 4 bullet points that I want the sell side notes to have in their notes the next day. These are the things that are the most important that you need everyone to know. If you had a bad quarter or you have some kind of squishy guidance, you want to tell them and provide the solution. Provide the explanation. Why did it happen? And why is it going to get better? And if it isn't going to get better, tell them. You want to leave no hanging chads or something that's left unanswered. You want to make sure that you tie up all loose ends with this callback. And to me, the agenda for this call is review the quarter, review the guidance, review your strategic priorities, and review what's on people's minds. To me, remember that you are competing for attention and time with so many other companies. You can never repeat how the quarter was, how the guidance was, what your strategic priorities were, or what your strategic priorities are, and how you're doing against those goals. You can never repeat those things too much. This is your chance to hammer them home to anyone that doesn't know. This is also your chance to clear up any misunderstandings that that particular analyst might have. Over the course of the quarter, you'll probably see their research notes, and every once in a while, they've just got something a little bit wrong. This is your chance to say, hey, by the way, I see that you're very focused on this. I have one client that has analysts that do lots of channel checks, and they are notoriously wrong. This is your chance to tell that analyst why those checks are not generally statistically significant, and why if they want to keep doing them, they can, but it's sending them down the wrong path. This is also your time to make sure that your guidance is heard. I've said before that this is a critical thing to make sure that you tell them what the guidance is. But sometimes you will have analysts whose numbers are outside of consensus or outside of where you want them. This is your chance to hammer that home and to tell them where consensus is going to shake out based upon the guidance that you've given. Also, this is your opportunity to go over each analyst's model. I've seen many instances where a company gives revenue guidance and profit guidance, but doesn't specifically give quarterly cash flow guidance, for example. And you can have analysts that just don't pay attention to their models because it's done by a third level associate that doesn't really know the company very well, and maybe they have a bust in one of their formulas. But they can be wildly outside of the consensus for cash flow, and it doesn't really rise to the level of importance to them because they're not paying attention to that. But it does rise to the level of importance to you as the company, because when you look at the Bloomberg estimates and it's skewed by 1 or 2 guys that are wildly out of consensus, it's not your fault, but it is your problem. So this is your opportunity to look at their models, look at the construction of the models, and they've given them to you over the course of the past quarter, so you know how they're built. This is your chance to go through every one of those numbers to make sure they're right. Now, you should have done that work in advance so that when you're on the call, you can be expeditious and to the point, saying, look, I think your Q3 cash flow numbers don't make a lot of sense to me given the net income you have, or whatever the issue is, but this is your chance to discuss their models with them to make sure that they are correct, or at least in line with what you are guiding to. You can also learn a lot from these calls. you get a sense for what's on people's minds if you do it just right. I would allocate a few minutes at the end to say, what are you hearing from people? Because certainly the sell side is getting incoming emails and text messages and Bloomberg messages from their investor clients who are saying, what was going on with the quarter? What was going on with the guidance? Why did they do this? I don't believe them on that. Whatever it is, there's going to be a lot of chatter. This is your chance to say, what are you hearing from people? And I would choose the best analysts, the ones that are most in touch with the broadest swath of investors, to ask that question to, and they'll appreciate you asking that question too. There's really nothing wrong with doing that. A couple of other suggestions I would make: turn on your camera for these callbacks. I think back in the day, people did audio calls only, and so it was totally acceptable. In today's world where Zoom has become the de facto standard of communication, there's really no need for you to do audio only, and I think that most sell-siders really respect being able to see your face, understand your body language and your intonation. If you want other people from your management team to listen in on those calls, do them in your conference room and have another Zoom facing the other direction so people can listen. There's really nothing wrong with that either, but you just want to make sure that you are face-to-face with the analyst. I've heard that from a number of people, and I've been making that recommendation to most of my clients as well. The other thing is, most analysts don't like group callbacks. I suppose that there are some instances, smaller emerging companies where the street doesn't know them that well, where group calls are okay. But by and large, most analysts prefer to talk to their companies one-on-one. That's because if they have a particularly smart angle or set of questions, they don't want other people hearing it. This is their time to have some proprietary information, proprietary Q&A that they can include in their notes. I mean, I've even seen the next morning where people have a research note that goes out in the afternoon, and the next morning they have, here's what I learned from my callback. That's particularly valuable to that analyst's franchise. And if you do a group call, I know a couple of companies that do it, and generally speaking, the sell side doesn't like it. So do individual calls with your camera on. And then two more things. Number one, have a cup of coffee or some type of caffeinated drink if you need to. I get it. It's late in the afternoon. If you're on the East Coast, it's been a huge adrenaline rush to do your earnings call. There's all that excitement to do it in the live Q&A. And then you've got 3 or 4 hours sometimes, or even more if you've got 19, 20, 30 analysts following you. It can be a grind to get through all of it. But you know, the analyst that gets you at 9 p.m. writes the same note as the analyst that gets you at 6 p.m. And so you need to be on. You can even split up the calls between CFO and CEO, or have another representative of the company to help you get through all these calls. But it's really important that you power through it. You can sleep after. You can go out for drinks after if you need to relax, but you need to really be on. And the 7th call and the 17th call are just as important as the first 2 calls. Don't forget that. The last thing to remember here is be patient. Analysts are busy. They're covering a bunch of other companies. Many of them have probably reported that night. And however tired you are, think about what their life is going to be like. They're going to be up way past midnight tonight, fiddling with models, editing research reports, and they've got many other companies. Do your part to make their job as easy as possible. Make your numbers as easy to digest as possible, because there's plenty of other companies that won't listen to this video and will have crummy calls and crummy callbacks and very difficult numbers to understand. And that might be a buy-rated stock for some of these analysts, and so they're going to be struggling. What do I do? The stock is down. I don't really understand. Do your part, be patient, make their lives as easy as possible, and just recognize that everyone is working double time during earnings season. And if you do that and they ask a silly question about share counts or tax rate or something that seems a little bit far afield that's just not terribly relevant, have patience. They're juggling a million things that night. So in summary, remember, this is like the dessert at the end of a great meal. Do your part, prepare as much for the dessert as you did for the meal so that you can send people off into the evening knowing everything that you want them to know about the quarter and the guidance and the strategic priorities of the company, so there's no more misunderstandings. That's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you back here again for another episode of Investor Insights. Thanks so much.